Hi, my name is Donna Ray Warren. When my first selectman asked me to serve on my comprehensive planning committee in our town, I agreed because it seemed like a good way to contribute to the community and because it just made sense to me to plan ahead. It didn't take too long, though, before I wished that we had some information from other comprehensive planning committee members who'd been through the process before. So that's really how this video got started. And I hope that if you're watching this, I guess that means that you're starting your plan, and I hope that you find this helpful, answering some questions or at least jogging ideas in how best you can plan for your town.
Searsmont is a traditional New England village. It was set up as a farming community and a mill community that grew into a fairly good-sized hub in the 1800s. About 10 years ago, we had about 900, a little over 900 people, and now we're up to close to 1,200. In the last decade, the town's grown 25%, and most of that growth is in migration.
We're very fortunate to have business in town that has been run probably for at least 5 generations, providing jobs for people that are local. And it depends on natural resources, which is really great because they own and manage a lot of woodlands here in town.
The fire department built a addition on the firehouse with all volunteer labor, all furnished by the community, and a lot of the material was donated. The community building had a lot of volunteer labor and a lot of material donated. There is a real sense of community in Searsmont, and some towns just don't have that. They're just a bunch of houses and people work elsewhere.
If you come into the town of Brooks from either direction on Route 7, what you come down is a roller coaster of hills into the valley of this pretty little village, settled right here on the river at the crossroads. This is what rural Maine is supposed to be.
That's pretty small. 1,000 people here, not too many people. You go down to the corner store, you see everybody you know. And you can tell how many people have gotten up by looking at how many newspapers have been bought already. Everybody knows each other, and it's an intimate feeling.
When somebody has a problem, all of a sudden you'll see a potluck. There's the annual 4th of July parade. Half the fire trucks and all the livestock in the county go down the main street. There's the sing-along at Paul's Hardware at Christmas time. 2 people that can sing and 200 that can't.
This town of a little more than 800 people, even though the population swells greatly in the summer, it is a very good community. We have a town center, we have a focus and sense of a real community life, whether it's the church, the library, the recreation, the fire department, what have you. We are a true rural community. And when you have that as a core, addressing common problems through the planning process is much more easy.
In part 2. I'm not sure where the budgetary and personnel items were called for.
I bent over backwards to try to recruit people for this committee from various walks of life, people from away, native people, working people, a very diverse group. I didn't want it weighted by any one group.
We're not a town who borrows money to get things done. We plan and we save money.
Recruiting people for these various projects has never been difficult for me. But I've always had the philosophy, one-on-one. Don't pick up the phone necessarily and call somebody and say, would you do this? It's much better to talk to them in person and explain the situation and why you need them.
1 unit in 10, now you're gonna have 20 units. Well, the first I heard about it is the first selectman, Bruce Briley, asked me to be on the committee, and I said, why not? And you're involved in the process and get to put in your 2 cents worth on what you think is going on. And
First one has to do with some kind of an assessment of the current administration and
I didn't know what it would be like, because I'd never encountered this sort of thing where I'd lived before. So it was an exciting chance to have some input and also to find out what the people that I was living with were going to be like.
Oh, I see, this is under inventory, boy, right, exactly, yep.
Hey, George.
But it doesn't say by who.
I was a little afraid, not of doing something wrong, but mostly as a 15-year part-time resident and 1-year full-time resident of the town, afraid that I would break taboos.
I want to satisfy her in this area as in the other areas, but this was so non-specific.
My sense is that we just don't have to change it.
Well, it turns out that when you are sitting in a room with people, you get to know them, you get to respect them, and you get to understand that there's very little that cannot be said.
Okay, well then, is everyone comfortable?
Unless you want to remove medium density.
Because by the end of a meeting, you walk out, your friends, your neighbors again. You leave it in the room.
He's gonna have a requirement to upgrade the whole Knowlton Road.
He does, there is another access into his land.
For the next town meeting in March, because if we have them in place, people that want to develop those things will just pass us by. My name is Duke Semino, and I'm the chairman of the Brooks Planning Board. Been involved in quite a few things here in town as they come along. But if they come in and there's no regulation, then you start to try to do it. You end up in the same fight Belfast had with Walmart of having to stop and pass a rule while somebody's trying to do it, and it's like changing the rule in the middle of their application, and you run the risk that they can get grandfathered.
I'm there to serve my community. I'm not there to make sure that my land gets treated this way. I just wanted a way to give back to the community because I really liked Brooks.
Well, should we begin? It ought to be in here, right, Tom?
Yeah.
This page.
It's a good group. People are working together. We're respectful of one another's opinions.
So if we're designating a growth area, what we're saying about that area is that the town can accept public roads?
We have an engineer, we have a landscape architect, we have a realtor, we have a boat builder, we have a fisherman. And each in their own way are contributing significantly to it.
Trying to find the middle ground.
Part of our goal, as I see it in the comprehensive plan, is as much as possible to not only capture that sense of community as part of the planning process, but in the end, to have a plan that it perpetuates the sense of community that we all value.
See my role as the person who first and foremost had to make sure everyone had input, that when it was time for a vote, actually calling the vote, trying to figure out how, if a conversation had gone on long enough, giving the committee a sense of where it was in the process during meetings.
I think Evie did a great job of trying to set a time limit for discussions of things and sticking to them. Generally speaking, I mean, if we needed to discuss something longer, we certainly did that.
It helps to write out a 1 to 2 year plan of almost meeting by meeting what you think the agendas can be, and obviously be flexible enough to change them as you need to, but it does give you a sense. And even having done that, I will say we are at least 6 months behind where I thought we would have been when I sat down to write that first plan.
We had a secretary who made sure that before he left the meeting, he had checked pretty well with people as to what we had said and done, and then got minutes by computer within, I think it was almost always 2 days, sometimes the next day. and ask for comments and corrections, so that when you come to the next meeting, you're not dealing with, well, what did we do last time?
It was my job to make sure that everybody on the committee knew what was happening, whether they were able to attend meetings or not. It was also my job to make sure that the town office knew what the committee was doing, so that the rest of the town could be informed.
The public was, of course, welcome to any of our regular meetings.
People wanted to come in and sit in and listen at one of our meetings, that we'd invite them to be a member. And in fact, I think 3 of our present members came to us in just that way.
When we first started this process, I honestly thought we would be done in a year. I thought we would do it all locally, we'd write it, and it would be adopted, because it was only a plan update.
This is where the town wants to try to attract the majority of new residential growth.
But you said there were other effects of it, for instance.
We're basically all new to this process and have other jobs and other lives, and we're just contributing to the community and trying to help do this plan. But you really need some professional help to do the heavy lifting.
And what the consultant did for us was get us organized and outlined. And we could have stumbled into it, and we could have mucked our way through it. The emphasis on the word muck. It gets to be really a lot of detail. Well,
many town meetings will spend 15 minutes to an hour talking about a $1,000 budget item. So I can understand people not wanting to lay out funds for a consultant. It was, in retrospect, by the way, one of the best decisions we made.
But as long as there's...
If I had any comment to make about it, I think we didn't use her enough. We tended to talk when we should have listened to her. Not that we would do what she would say, but we were paying her. I mean, to be blunt about it, we were paying for her time and her expertise, and we could have gotten more from her early on, I think.
Well, the basis of the comprehensive plan is to look at the town and how it operates as a whole and map out a plan for the next 10 years in all facets of operating a town.
What a lot of comprehensive plan committees start to do is they get involved with the inventory of what's in the town, which is important. But you can get so involved in the inventory, which is the here and now and what's here, that by the time you get to where are we going and what are we going to do, you're dead. You're all worn out, you're all burnt, you've burned out the whole committee.
The fishing community has been a way of life for many families here for years. That way of life is threatened by such things within our town as access to the water. The town itself is faced with the sale of land and the building of houses, particularly along the shoreline.
If in the last 10 years there were 200 new houses sited in Searsmont, we could be looking at 300, 400 new houses in the next 10 or 15 years that need to be put somewhere.
We actually mapped them, and they're all over the place. In other words, there was no direction for the growth.
The woods I used to play in, right now, I went down to visit my parents this weekend. They've blasted out house lots, quarter-acre house lots out of solid rock, and I keep pointing that out to people here in town who say, well, the geography, the steep hills, the wetlands, that'll keep it from being built. Nope. If there's enough money on the table, you can build anything, any place.
It's becoming a bedroom community, and that raises a lot of problems for the industry that's here and for the families who have been here forever. They're torn because they want to sell their property and make a lot of money, but they also want the property to stay the same.
We were set way back in the woods. We had a couple freezer pigs we raised a year on a nice clean area. We raised a few goats and some chickens, and that was all fine. And then the gentleman we bought our land from sold off the rest of his 25 or 30 acres, and it became a subdivision of upscale housing. And all of a sudden, they're complaining, these people are raising goats and pigs.
And with the population also comes the concerns of increases on the demand for the fire, the ambulance, the transfer station, all the services that we provide in town.
You have to provide more town office staff. You have your school assessment goes way up. Your county tax goes up. So the tax issue is probably one of the most critical issues in dealing with a municipality.
When you move schools around, you have to bus the kids to the school. If you scatter people all around, then you have to provide roads, you have to maintain the roads.
Theoretically, if your values go up across the board, then the mill rate will go down, so your actual tax payment will stay consistent. But in reality, what happens is the more people that move in, the more growth that we have, the more services are demanded, the mill rate doesn't go down.
And we realized that one of the things that we had to do was be able to think big and to look at the town as an interconnected set of services and programs. In other words, we needed a vision.
What people said is they wanted to preserve the rural environment, they wanted to enhance the village center.
Keep it rural and keep the land in production rather than losing it all to houses and having the land be consumed and making us a suburban community.
We like the fact that you can get a job here, that our forests are working for us and not just parks or not just future subdivisions.
Where are we now?
Are we on to page 8? Are we all right?
Yes, we finished 7.
Anything else there that we need to address?
Policies and goals are where the recommendations emerge that are going to be the plan.
This one is really important. Okay.
We found a committee can march fairly smartly through most of the chapters. They're usually between 10 and 12 chapters by issue: historic preservation, recreation, transportation, economic development, land use, natural resources, those sort of issue categories.
If somebody says, well, you weren't redundantly detailed, we divided things up to ask certain members of the committee to become the world's greatest experts on a particular section.
Okay.
My notes were okay?
Yes.
Yes, that was so great.
But we agreed to work as a whole, as a committee of the whole, on the land use section.
Do you see that, everybody? That's bullet number 3 under the land use ordinance general standards. You can probably never underestimate the amount of time it will take to get through the natural resource and the land use chapters.
Standards should be applicable to anticipated type and level of usage and location with respect to growth in rural areas.
Mm-hmm. This is where you're really deciding what sections of town are going to be accepting new development and what areas of town you're trying to set aside so that there won't be development. And suddenly people are looking at maps and thinking about where they live or where their fathers-in-law live or their cousins or their best friends.
There's a lot of tension between the people who have lived here for generations and the new people who have arrived here, and that's something that as a select person I deal with on a daily basis.
If you talk to a person that has lived here all their lives and maybe their fathers and mothers before them, they have a great suspicion of something like this, and they have that old-time philosophy that I own this land, I pay taxes on this land, and I should be able to do with this land as I choose.
You do have to struggle with the rights of the individual with the rights of the community as a whole. And you have to find a balance between the two.
And what we have to ask ourselves is, okay, if we do nothing, it's going to cost us this, and we're going to end up with this having lost all of the things that we love about our town. Its rural character, its sense of community. We will have lost all of that.
I think everybody wants to protect what we have, but I don't think that they're very much in agreement on how to do it.
Not everybody sees things the same way, we know, and not everybody's needs are the same. And somehow you're going to have to try to meet the most needs you can, and you won't meet everybody's needs.
You have to use the Z word, zoning, And I think that this is a very, very controversial issue.
Because you have 1,200 people who live in town, and you have 1,200 different opinions of what they can do with their land and what their neighbors should be able to do with their land. Let me put the chicken coop on my property, but don't you dare let my neighbor put in a pig pen.
So what you found was that people reacted not to the town as a complete system, but to the town as discrete, disconnected pieces that affected them personally.
You really can't decide, vote, or by consensus on some of these issues until everyone at the table appreciates everybody else's perspective. And we saw many votes where it was sort of surprising how it all turned out. Some folks really came to very different perspectives than they probably held at the beginning of a discussion.
I think every single one of us can probably say that we changed our mind about at least one of the different sections in the comprehensive plan.
The process for town involvement from the very beginning we felt was important because we did not want to have any perception that the community itself was somehow not a participant in the process, or that they were going to be handed a product at the end that was a take it or leave it thing prepared by people who were distant to them.
We have had more than 12 opportunities for the public to be a formal part of the process, as well as the openness of nearly 50 meetings of the committee themselves.
The inventory and analysis is supposed to be factual. This is what's in the town. There's this many houses. These are the ordinances we have. This summarizes what the plan says will be done. That's policies and implementation strategies, how it's going to be done.
Especially as a young mother, my time is very valuable to me, if to nobody else. And that is most people's concern. If they're going to go to a public meeting, they want to know when it's going to start, when it's going to end. When they leave, they want to feel as if the reason for their meeting have been met. It's a big thing if you can make a person feel like their time has not been wasted.
The 2000 census says that 52% of the people, the workforce in the town of Brooks is now white collar, professional, sales. 21% is in production, transportation, and material moving, and only 3% are still in farming, fishery, and forestry.
And hopefully, if there's anything that we've looked over, that somebody will be there that can say, well, did you consider this? And then we can say, no, but we will tonight.
We've had what we call neighborhood meetings because what happens in each neighborhood is more of a concern to the people who live there than the people who live across town. And those neighborhood meetings turned out very well. We got a good response, a fairly good response for those meetings, and we worked hard to incorporate all the information we could get from different people into updating the comprehensive plan.
And we started setting up individual meetings with these landowners. We would call them and say, we're from the Comprehensive Planning Committee. We'd like to talk to you and answer any questions you have.
We made a mailing to anybody that owned over 100 acres in Brooks. Essentially 35 people own 8,100 acres out of the 16,000 that makes up the town. And in that meeting, we had 20 of them show up and talk with us about what they would like to see.
We've had a specific business meeting where we invited people who owned a business or was interested in owning a business to come and give us their opinions on that aspect of a plan.
You take one kid from high school and send him into the Brooks tomorrow and ask him what kind of job he's going to get. And you know he's either going to be on a farm or he's going to be over here at Bob's making $6 an hour. Okay, now what kind of future does he have at $6 an hour over there? If we don't bring some type of industry to this area to benefit the whole community, we'll never get our sidewalks, we'll never get a central sewer system, we'll never get out of the let's go to Bangor and play and go on home and rest.
We had to learn two things as the process went on. Of course, through practice, we got better at both of these two things. One is not to get defensive.
One important economic factor towards drawing in business is we have a village.
The second important lesson that we learned was there are a few things that bear repeating and repeating and repeating. And one is that growth is going to happen in any case. In the two previous decades, our population increase was 25% every 10 years. Those are facts. Those are messages you can provide to people who have concerns so that they know that you're making efforts to direct growth for a reason.
If we can let the public know that we do truly care about what they think and that our goal is to create something that they want, if we can make them understand that at the end of our meetings, then we've done what we're supposed to do.
Because it can't be from us, it's got to be from the town, because it's eventually got to get passed by the town.
The comprehensive plan is available through the town office via email to anyone who requests it. In hard copy at the town office, in hard copy at the library. You can take out circulating copies. And we found that over half of the people at the public hearing had either never heard of it, had tremendous questions about things that we honestly thought had been settled months or even years prior.
The biggest issue is the one about the land and how to use the land, and that's the one that the people care about the most.
What we have found, however, is people who were opposed to the plan in principle months before, but who've had an opportunity to talk about the plan with us over time, have become grudging allies and are willing to speak out in favor of the plan.
Certain people chose to come to our committee meetings to get more involved, and there's one example I thought of one particular large landowner in town who did that.
We hope that the vote will be yes, but either way, a tremendous amount of work has been done, and if the vote is yes, we'll move forward to making the plan and its recommendations more of a reality, and if the vote is no, there is plenty of information for another group to make the changes that the community seems to want.
It's really rewarding to work with a group of people who care so much about the town as a whole.
We've had 12 people who have shown up almost every meeting, who volunteer their time to work on different aspects of the process, who have strong opinions one way or the other and aren't afraid to voice them for the most part.
They really get along very well in spite of the fact that they were really on opposite ends of the table many, many times.
The first few months, first year, it's gathering information and so on, and it seems like you're not really getting anywhere. And then as you get nearer the end of the process, things begin to fall into place and it becomes well worth the trouble.
This was an extraordinary experience. I loved doing it. Even when I was tired going into a meeting after a day at work, I wasn't tired when I came out of the meeting. I was energized.
Sense of humor important? Boy, if you don't have a sense of humor dealing with the government, you're in real trouble. So you've got to have a sense of humor.
But we are the government in this case, aren't we?
That's right. That's why we got to have a sense of humor.
If somebody from another committee asked me how best to spend their time, I would say that it's worth taking the time to do research. And so finally, that's what this addendum is all about, is I wanted to just pass along a few of the challenges that different towns ran into and some of the tools and strategies that they utilized and tailored to their town.
The town of Brooks owns 2 tracts of land that have come back for taxes that are over 100 acres. And the question is going to be, do we want to do nothing with them? Do we want to reforest them? One of them was the town forest for years. Do we want to develop them for housing, for business? What's the town's pleasure is going to become the question. The answer may be to hold them. It could be to sell them, but that at the last town meeting got a lot of resistance. People are saying, well, if the town's not broke, why would we want to get rid of this land? Isn't people want a rural town? Let's forest it and lead the way for those big landowners.
We've designated Naskig as the area for commercial fishing, and we're trying to make sure the town holds on to it.
One of the things we're recommending is that there be a harbor master, that we have a harbor ordinance that controls and sets regulations concerning the comings and goings and the uses within the harbor. The issue there that is politically sensitive is how that position gets paid for. I think to have some sense of this town government, you need to understand that our town government is open 3 hours on Tuesday every week, and that's the extent of our official functioning town government. We are not a 8 to 5 government, and so when you talk about having another person who with a position and a title and a salary, that is a significant thing within this community. It's not only significant in the sense of that you are appointing somebody with some authority, but that you're also going to have to pay that person in a position, and that they're going to be regulating some aspect of your life. And so to that extent, there can be controversy about it. But I think the one thing that there's a consensus on is that we have reached the point where, for the purpose of our local industry, there's a need for such position, such regulation.
It's hard for people to transpose sometimes between paper and the actual land, but sometimes you can drive around and see examples of good land use or planning or vistas or what the town center should look like. And I would encourage groups to try and do that. Get a van and go take a tour someplace. And you can say, God, I don't want our place to look like that. Or you could say, hey, that might work in our town.
We set up rural districts and growth districts. Growth districts are those districts where we want to direct new residential and industrial and commercial development. And rural districts are those districts that we want to maintain the rural landscape in. Agriculture, forestry, undeveloped land.
Yeah, we're trying to concentrate growth around the village area and some other areas that are already developing at a pretty good rate, and try to keep the growth in those areas and keep a lot of the forest land and open land as it is, as much as we can.
Our original intention was to have minimum lot sizes throughout the town. People didn't feel that was flexible enough, especially in the rural areas, so we went to the whole concept of growth density rather than minimum lot size. We realized that rather than defining land use in terms of lot size, we could define land use in terms of how much of the land was built and how much of the land was left open or unbuilt. It may sound like a fine point, but it's a very important one because you're allowing a lot of landowner flexibility in the rural areas of the town, or the potentially identified rural areas of the town.
One of the considerations we had is if we can't do townwide zoning, and yet knowing that so much of our development issues are shoreline related, maybe the simple thing is just to expand the depth or the area that the shoreline zone embraces. As a spirit of compromise and trying to address a problem through existing tools rather than creating new tools, we work within the structure of the shoreline zone to strengthen that ordinance, strengthen it by enforcement, strengthen it by the area it covers, and in that way try to deal in a more limited way with development issues.
There's a variety of incentives for tax owners to do something with their land to conserve it and get a break on their taxes at the same time. We have farmland and open space, tree growth.
We really need to be pushing that because a lot of people don't participate in that could, and it's a tool that we could use to protect open space.
The Land Trust was actually very excited to work with the town of Searsmont in the midst of their comprehensive planning process, because that process where a community kind of describes how they want their town to look into the future provides a perfect opportunity for the tools of a land trust to help them protect the important places in their community. One, through the fundraising activities for the acquisition of private land. Two, within development proposals that might include a percentage of land that gets developed and the rest get undeveloped with subdivision law, for example. The land trust can be the partner in helping to protect those lands that are part of an application that requires a percentage be protected. They can either hold on to the title and keep owning it and put a conservation easement on their land. Well, an easement which is very flexible in its design, though permanent once it is designed, can be everything from forever wild all the way to the other end of the spectrum where a family wants to see a small amount of development because they're passing their land on to their children. They want to make sure their children have the right to have a home on that piece of land. So it will allow for limited development, meaning less than what would happen on the open market. An easement can also describe that this has been a working landscape. It's been forested and harvested for many years, and we want to see that continue over time, and that can be insured into the future so that that will be allowed and not restricted.
One of the more oddball techniques available to municipalities in the state of Maine is something called the TIF, or TIF. It's the Tax Increment Financing Program. You can petition the state to allow you to shelter additional tax revenues that have come about through development of property, and either keep all of the additional tax revenues from the assessed value of the development in the town, or share it between a town and the business doing the development. The sheltering is necessary in order to avoid a reduction in state support for your schools, and also to avoid an increase in county taxes. State is willing to do this because TIFs are designed to foster economic development, specifically to retain or create jobs.